So the honest answer is, who knows? It's quite literally the $1 million question always. It's one of the hardest things, but it really just comes down to you've really got to be holding hands and walking through the process together and making those decisions. One of the key things I reference all the time is, you can buy a $100 dining room light fixture and you can buy a $100,000 dining room light fixture. That's a huge impact to your cost per square foot, right? One 2 foot by 2 foot light fixture can completely impact the total cost per square foot of the house. And so that's really where it's the challenge. So, a lot of times we'll saying, okay, well, if you're staying with sort of moderate, higher end builder grade finishes, then we can, do a sort of a finish package for this. It's really getting all those things on paper, onto a plan at the beginning. And what we do is look at it right at the schematic design, have a plan, some elevations, maybe some understanding of finishes or unique things or something that we're working around, whatever particular unique parameter is. And then we can do a very simple high level budget. And from there, we can sort of tweak or take things out, add things in, whatever the case may be. But we're not the tract home builders or the national home builders that build that same house, 1,000 times. We're not an auto manufacturer. We're not building that car 1,000,000 times. It's tricky, and it's one of the hardest and probably most frustrating components of what we do, both from our side and also from our client side, because things are constantly changing. Really, in anything that we do, we first start to try to work with, is there a particular timeline in which you're trying to work with? And then can we work backwards from there? So are you trying to be in your house by Thanksgiving? Well, if it's Halloween, the answer is no. What are we trying to do? Is it a mortgage? Is it a construction loan? Is it a family event? Kids are starting school, kids are graduating school. What's driving that schedule? And then first, really backing up and seeing, can we deliver that? We do a lot of home renovations. A lot of people, they're like, hey, I can move out, because if you move out, our project can go way faster. Because if we're working around you and the kids and the dog, and you're trying to do Zoom calls from home, and we've got, jackhammers and nail guns and, stuff coming inside and out of the house, it's gonna slow us down. So a lot of times, we'll do a renovation project and they'll say, hey, we can go stay at the family house at the beach for the summer. We can come in and knock it out in 3 months because you're gone. So that is a huge impact, and it's a lot of logistics. The other key thing that we can do is, if we know, working around a parameter like that, then maybe we buy, go ahead and let's get all the appliances, let's get all the fixtures, let's get all those key items that tend to be long lead items, have them in a storage unit so that they're there, and then we get started, so that we're not going on construction and then next thing you know, we can't finish up the electrical because we're waiting on all the light fixtures or a piece of equipment or the appliances. That all frames around the bigger picture of having a schedule. And the schedule is variable because people get busy, emergencies happen, things show up early, things show up late. Those are the twists and turns of the schedule, but you gotta know where you're going and you gotta be aligned. Again, it's sort of like the budget. It's constant communication, it's keeping you informed, it's working from that initial plan, and how is that changed? So in terms of space optimization, when you're starting from scratch, it's a very different set of parameters. One of the great examples I love to use is, especially with some of these downtown houses where your cost per square foot is so high, even just on the land, is take your hot water heater out of the house, do an instantaneous hot water heater, because they're a lot more efficient, but also you're not taking up that square footage in the house. Why have something utilitarian like a hot water heater taking up space where it could be a closet, it could be the corner of a room, it could be who knows what? Put that hot water heater mounted outside the house, and that way it's out of the way, and you're taking back space that would go to something else that doesn't really need to be there. We live very differently today. We went into houses and offices and we tore down every single wall and lived in one big wide open space. through COVID, we realized, well, if I'm doing my work Zoom call and my kids are over here doing their school Zoom call, it doesn't work in one big room. Office space doesn't work in one big room. You've got to have private conversations. You want some peace and quiet. You want to be apart from people. We don't necessarily want the compartmentalized houses of the early, 30s, 40s, and 50s. We live very differently, but at the same token, I think we've come back to appreciate a little more compartmentalization of space. And there's times where you want to have a nice big open space and you can take advantage of that. And there's times where you might want just a little small space. And that's really what we've seen. And some of the designs where we've done recently is you can do, like for a kid's bedroom, a very, very, what we would consider today a small bedroom, like a 10 by 10, which as little as 5 or 6 years ago, you never would have done. It'd be a 15 by 15 or 15 by 20. But now you don't have to have all that stuff in the bedroom. Now they might have the game room or something like that. So they don't have to have all that stuff in the bedroom. So you can live a lot differently and a little more efficiently. And then also the cost per square foot's impacted that, right? What probably would have been a 5,000 square foot house, again, 4 or 5 years ago, is now people are trying more to be around 3,000, 3,500 square feet because of the cost per square foot. All those things have changed based on how we live and based on the technology in which we integrate into our homes. Looking at solar hot water and daylighting issues and materials, what it all comes down to is what are you doing and how are you minimizing the waste? And so in the work that we do, we really try to minimize our waste, both in the design process. Again, this is the integration of design and construction so that we're not cutting off a bunch of little pieces for studs, or if we're cutting studs, we're able to then use them again in other places or parts of the house or temporary structures. But it really begins too in the siding of the house or the building. Is it north facing, south facing? Are we taking advantage of the siding or existing trees and foliage to provide shade to the house? And then that impacts your mechanical load, which is one of the biggest drivers of your electric bill or gas bill, is how much are you having to heat and cool this space? And those are the design decisions that come in, and that's where you help say, is sustainability the number one priority, or is this beautiful view out to the lake my priority? But any sustainability starts with the initial plan. What is it? Why are you doing it? Are you doing it to save money on operating costs? Are you doing it because you want to be good to the environment? Do you want to use recycled materials? Do you want renewable materials? Are you using high energy efficient HVAC units? How we use sustainability really comes up to the client. And so how important is it to them? That's how we then integrate it into the design. But in our daily construction methods, we do the best that we can. So we're not sending stuff to the dump, and we're using as much of the materials as we can. One of the things that we try to look at in a project like that is, depending on what's the purpose of true historic preservation project, is basically where you go back in and you say, okay, this was the paint from that era, this is how they lived in that era, this was the flooring, this was the types of windows and things like that. That's as much an art as it is a science, and there are people that drill down and really study on that. A lot of the types of projects that we get into are about uncovering some of that historic quality and then embracing that, and how do we do that. So a project we did downtown, the front porch was fully enclosed, and we opened that up and brought that back to the way the house was originally built, with this beautiful, nice, open front porch. We matched the front windows when they were replaced. We matched them to the same opening and proportion that was there. We didn't do a true historic refurbishment of them because they were so far gone and would have been too expensive to try to replace, but we did maintain the proportion of them and the style. And then when we did the addition to the house, we did the same thing. We kept that same proportion and style of those windows, so it integrated the new and the old. In that house in particular, one of the really beautiful things was, as we took multiple layers of sheetrock off, we discovered all this old school shiplap siding. And literally that was the wood siding that was inside the house. This was way before you were putting drywall up, and it was not a rich part of town, so they didn't have money to do lath and plaster. And so as we uncovered all that, the homeowner was really excited about, let's preserve some of this. Let's bring this back to its fruition. And so we pulled all the nails out, we stained it, we found some colors that would have sort of been covered colors from that era, and it just turned out really beautifully. We restored some of the existing hardwood floors, and then in the new section, we basically juxtaposed new hardwood floors against the old, so you had a sense of, okay, I'm going from the old part of the house to the new part of the house. That's really what gets exciting about this stuff, is how do you take what was there, the bones of the structure, and bring those and refresh those for today, and what does the client like about this house? A lot of times you find the house, this old house, what is it that you like about it? You know, do you like the fact that you can open up and create this porch? Do you like the way the fireplace sits in the space? Do you like the way the kitchen is off to the side, which nowadays, you know, you walk right in and the kitchen's right there. You know, there's all these different things. It's really about understanding what drove them to select this place. What do they want to embrace in what's there? And then how do we enhance that by using that as the baseline for how we either preserve it, refresh it, add to it.